Hello, good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here at Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C Stewart and welcome to our usual smorgasbord of various things and news items from a Scottish perspective. Now, ordinarily I would turn to welcome a guest, but this evening, unfortunately, you're stuck with myself. And we've had a little bit of a bump here in terms of our Linda, but more of that later on before we go through our usual array of both Scottish and international news, which tonight will include Ukraine, a leadership election, the budget that was passed today, praise from an unlikely source for the Scottish Government, a warning for a bowie from the Scottish people, Northern Ireland rationing on the shelves, and forward thinking in terms of scrapping of VAT on a holiday product, and when in Spain, how the train ended up being too big. But as we always do, we start this evening with Ukrainian update, day 363 as it is, and today the Russian President Vladimir Putin has given a long televised national address to the joint houses of the Russian Parliament in which he blamed the West for starting the war in Ukraine, announced Russia would suspend the New START nuclear treaty with the United States and promised a new fund to help those who have lost loved ones in what he referred to as Russian special military operation in Ukraine. Putin claimed the Ukrainian people had become hostages of their Western masters who occupied the country in political, economic and military terms. He said the regime is not serving their national interest. They are serving, he claimed, the interests of foreign powers. He also claimed the West is trying to turn a local conflict into a global one and stated, "We will react in an appropriate way. We are talking about the existence of our country." Putin went on to say and claim the West had begun not just a military but an economic aggression against Russia. They have not achieved success in either of these areas, he said, boasting that Russia's economy had restructured and that the initiators of the sanctions are punishing themselves. Ukrainian responses to the speech were scathing. He is in a completely different reality where there is no opportunity to conduct a dialogue about justice and international law, political advisor Mikhailo Podolyak said. Another advisor, Anton Gerashenko, said the insolent thief said that Russian farmers harvested a record harvest last year, and he shyly kept silent about the fact that it was stolen Ukrainian grain, which was transported to the Russian Federation by freight trains. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said on Tuesday Russia's decision to suspend participation in the New START bilateral nuclear arms control treaty made the world a more dangerous place, and he urged Moscow to reconsider. While the Russian president was speaking, Russian forces shelled civilian areas of the southern city of Kherson, killing 6 people and injuring 12 more. There have been close to 19,000 civilian casualties since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, according to the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. The OHCHR released the report citing the number of casualties as being over 7,000 killed and close to 12,000 injured, but believes the actual figures are considerably higher. In other news, Belarus said today there was a significant grouping of Ukrainian troops massed near its border and warned that this posed a threat to its security. Japan is to provide $5.5 billion in financial aid to the Ukraine. The Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, is in Kyiv to meet with Zelensky and reiterate Italy's support for the war-torn country. Closer to home, in terms of leadership in Scotland, the SNP leadership election has seen no further declarations today of candidates. We have 3 candidates announcing their wish to be leader of the Scottish National Party and, of course, put themselves forward to become the First Minister of Scotland. Ash Regan, MSP, former Community Safety Minister, Hamza Yousaf, MSP, Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care, and Kate Forbes, MSP, Cabinet Secretary for Finance and the Economy. Nominations are due to close on Friday the 24th of February at noon, and SNP members can cast their votes from the 13th of March, with the winner being announced 2 weeks later on the 27th. SNP members have a vote to elect their party leader, and of course it will be the Parliament which will elect the First Minister when Nicola Sturgeon formally stands down. And in terms of business within the Parliament today, the Scottish budget, so yes, 68, no, 57. And for those of us, particularly myself, the major news item here, of course, is the reversal of the cut in Creative Scotland funding of £6.6 million. However, it was not all smooth sailing, as Scotland's opposition parties have been slammed for shamefully voting against the Scottish Government's budget, which has delivered key funding for struggling households during the Westminster-made cost of living crisis. The SNP-led Scottish Government delivered a balanced budget which passed despite opposition efforts within the rigid fiscal constraints of devolution. The Scottish Government says that the 2023-24 budget delivers significant resources to deliver on its three key aims, which are, of course, very different to the three key aims of the Westminster Government. Firstly, it's tackling child poverty. Second, in Scotland, transforming the economy to deliver net zero. And thirdly, delivering sustainable public services. Kenneth Gibson, MSP, who convenes Holyrood's Finance and Public Administration Committee, commented, "This budget delivers on the priorities of the people of Scotland, investing significant resources to tackle child poverty, accelerate Scotland's transition to net zero, and ensure our public services are fit for the future." Time and again, the opposition demands higher public spending without identifying any cuts to balance Scotland's fixed budget. Both Labour and the Tories, he claimed, shamefully voted down a budget that delivers nearly £14 billion for NHS boards, £5.2 billion for devolved social security payments, and £80 million capital funding to support the expansion of free school meals. Mr Gibson continued and claimed that while the SNP government delivers for the people of Scotland, it's up to opposition MSPs to explain to the public why they voted down this vital support for struggling households in their constituency. Also announced by Scotland's Deputy First Minister John Swinney in the Chamber this afternoon was a 3% real terms increase to local authority budgets, totalling £793 million of additional funding. This was welcomed warmly by SNP councillor Kelly Parry, who is the leader of Midlothian Council, as a boost to local government funding. She said, "This welcome cash boost to local authority budgets will significantly help deliver the delivery of vital public services for the people of Scotland." My apologies. Against a difficult financial backdrop, accelerated by a disastrous mini-budget by the Liz Truss Tory administration at Westminster, and with a fixed budget, the Scottish National Party government have shown once again the value they place on funding local government in Scotland. Only the SNP can be trusted to deliver for Scotland, and this budget makes that point emphatically, and I very much welcome the significant investment in local services. Elsewhere in the Parliament, the Green Party said that the budget presented by the SNP Green government is the greenest budget in the Parliament's history. Speaking after the vote, the Scottish Greens finance spokesperson Ross Greer, MSP, said, "Scottish Green values run right through this budget. We have taken a laser-like focus to tackling child poverty and escalating our actions to protect the climate. It is the greenest budget in the history of our Parliament, and I am very proud of the work we have done in cooperation with Deputy First Minister John Swinney, in particular, to deliver it. We want Scotland to be the best country to live and grow up in. This budget takes us a big step closer to that, with a big expansion of free school meals and the £25 per week Scottish Child payment, as well as scrapping peak rail fares and continued free bus travel for young people." And that praise from an unlikely source was to come today from England's Chief Medical Officer, who has praised the Scottish Government public health performance. Sir Chris Whitty, well known for many of us during the pandemic for sharing the daily briefings with the government in Westminster and as the Chief Medical Officer for England, lauded the SNP government's transformative public health measures in Scotland. He was speaking this morning to Westminster's Health and Social Care Committee, and he remarked that he wanted to acknowledge the really great work that is done in Scotland. Before telling the SNP MP Martin Day, Scotland has actually blazed a trail in many areas of public health. Sir Chris added that he and health colleagues in England have learnt from Scotland's public health vision. In Scotland, the SNP government has introduced free school meals for all children from primary 1 to primary 5 and all children from households in receipt of universal credit, free prescriptions, free dental care, the baby box and the Scottish Child Payment, described by leading charities as game-changing. Commenting, SNP health spokesperson at Westminster, the aforementioned Martin Day MP, said it was no surprise that England's Chief Medical Officer, Sir Chris Whitty, had been looking north, while public health standards in the rest of the UK remain stuck. He said, the SNP government's approach to improving Scotland's public health is working, and we are moving in the right direction. Yet we all know there is much work to do, while far too many families continue to be affected by the Westminster cost of living crisis. The SNP has used the powers it does have to ensure that people in Scotland benefit from the most generous social contract in any part of the United Kingdom. The only way we can realise our full potential as the healthier, stronger and more equal nation we all want to see is through independence. And the warning to Andrew Bowie was don't bring nuclear to Scotland. The newly appointed UK nuclear minister and Scottish Tory, Andrew Bowie, I presume that's his title, not what we expect him to do as the minister, has been warned to never bring nuclear to Scotland and instead to invest in renewable energy. Bowie has been pressed to urge the UK government to invest in renewable energy sources in Scotland, such as the Acorn project, which would create, of course, hundreds of jobs for his constituents in West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine. The SNP Scottish Government has opposed the creation of new nuclear power stations as they would not immediately solve the cost of living crisis facing households across the whole of Scotland. Instead, the government in Scotland favours investing in a just transition towards renewable energy sources. Commenting, the SNP's energy spokesperson, Alan Brown MP, said, Andrew Bowie must be taking up one of the most pointless ministerial positions in the UK government. If the Tories think they will bring down energy bills by building nuclear power stations that won't be ready for years to come, then they are more delusional than we thought. Nuclear is also one of the most expensive forms of energy when compared with renewable sources such as wind power. Households across Scotland are desperate for solutions to sky-high energy bills now, and nuclear power will not provide that answer. Scotland is rich with renewable energy potential, and we cannot have our resources squandered once again by successive Westminster governments. The only way we can harness the potential of Scotland's energy is by becoming an independent country. And on the same vein, as well as the warning to the new nuclear minister, the Scottish National Party has, or Ian Blackford MP, has launched a roadmap for Scotland's green industrial future, saying that opportunities to boost economic productivity are there to be seized, launching ambitious plans to create a roadmap for Scotland's industrial future. The Ross Skye and Lochaber MP and SNP business ambassador spoke in Glasgow today ahead of meetings with business and academic leaders to identify key opportunities to boost Scotland's economic productivity in sectors with significant sustainable growth potential. Commenting, Blackford said, as SNP business ambassador, I have commissioned two independent experts, Sir Martin Donnelly and Professor Dominic Hilder to identify key opportunities to boost Scotland's economic productivity and develop a roadmap for policymakers that can change the landscape for green industrial development in Scotland. Global moves towards decarbonisation give Scotland an enormous opportunity to be at the forefront of the green industrial revolution, building on our existing strengths in technological innovation, research and development. But in order to maximise the benefits of that unrivalled potential, we need the right infrastructure in place, and we need to create the right environment for investment. Sir Martin Donnelly, former Permanent Secretary at the Department for Business Innovation and Skills and the Department for International Trade, went on to comment, under any political scenario, unlocking Scotland's potential as a high value added, high productivity economy is critical, and I look forward to meeting with stakeholders over the coming days. Professor Dominic Hilder of London Business School added, Scotland has an internationally recognised competitive strength in higher and further education. We will be meeting with academic leaders, entrepreneurs and leaders of large businesses to assess how cutting-edge research and development can be leveraged more effectively, identify constraints to faster growth, and suggest ways to create a more enabling environment for investment. And as we look to the future, there is further news of perhaps a look to the past at Westminster. That comes in the shape of Eurosceptic Tory MPs demanding to see the full text of the Northern Ireland deal. The European Research Group of Eurosceptic Conservative MPs have made this demand to see the full text of any deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol, thus piling the pressure on the Prime Minister to meet their demands of radical changes to the Brexit trading arrangements. Their demands come as the European Commission Vice President in charge of Brexit said the European Union and the United Kingdom could see the finishing line for a deal, telling reporters that he hoped the deal would create conditions for the next 25 years of peace in Northern Ireland. However, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, Democrat Unionist Party leader, plans to address the ERG, the European Reform Group, on Tuesday amid growing fears of a sellout in the group. The DUP chief has already said the deal on the table falls short of the 7 conditions that the Democratic Unionist Party have laid out for the deal and for resumption of power sharing instalment. The ERG also want a line-by-line review of any deal by their star chamber, as they call them, of lawyers before they give it the reject it or back it decision. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly was due to have a video link conference call with the European Commission Vice President Maroš Šefčovič on Tuesday, but the Prime Minister's spokesperson was playing down the prospect of a deal being announced today, and it's not happened, or tomorrow being Wednesday. There is some concern that the longer the two sides leave it to strike a deal, the greater the risk of it unravelling. If a deal is agreed, the government is expected to move quickly with hopes that the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen could come to London to shake on it. Ministers still hope to put the deal to a vote in the House of Commons, as it would bind in MPs politically, but Number 10 has so far refused to commit to a vote. Government insiders have stressed that the DUP will not be shown the text of the agreement before it is struck and will not be granted a veto on any of the contents. It seems that all battle lines over hard and soft Brexit have resurfaced and once again been drawn. And we go from hints of the past to something that I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime up until the pandemic and post-Brexit. And with news today that Asda and Morrison's are rationing some fresh produce, including tomatoes and peppers. And in my entire life, I don't think I have seen so many empty shelves in supermarkets. As Asda and Morrison's have announced that they are bringing in rationing of salad items, including tomatoes, peppers and cucumbers, amid shortages which have been caused by poor weather both in southern Europe and in the north of Africa. Asda said it was limiting shoppers to 3 items each on 8 fresh produce lines, which include broccoli, cauliflower, raspberries and lettuce, to ensure all customers can get what they need. Morrison's is putting limits of 2 per item on tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce and peppers from tomorrow. A spokesperson said, like other supermarkets, we are experiencing sourcing challenges in some products that are grown in southern Spain and North Africa. We have introduced a temporary limit of 3 of each product on a very small number of fruit and vegetable lines, so customers can pick up the products they are looking for. Asda's move comes after importers have said that supplies of salad and field crops had been affected by a mixture of unseasonable weather in Spain and southern Europe and storms in the Mediterranean, combined with a reduction in the amount of crops planted in heated glasshouses in the Netherlands as energy bills have soared. At this time of year, Murcia in southeastern Spain produces an estimated 80% of many salad and vegetable crops that are sold in the UK. Production in Britain doesn't usually begin until around late March or April. Italy, Morocco and elsewhere in North Africa are often used as an alternative source of supply, but these areas have also had cold weather in recent weeks, and shipments from Morocco have also been held up by storms, and yet another example of why the climate crisis is indeed very, very important to some of the measures that we've already outlined in terms of green growth, both for the industrial future and indeed for the priorities within the budget. And again, we come back, and this is the luxury. It's an interesting thing, of course. Limiting salad products in Scotland may well start a number of comedians off on a run. Here we are with an SNP MP stepping up their campaign for the United Kingdom government to scrap VAT and sunscreen. And much though we may think it's not necessarily something that we should be concerned about, Amy Callaghan MP certainly has the bit between her teeth, and quite rightly so. As a skin cancer survivor, she today has taken her campaign to have VAT removed from sunscreen directly to the Tory Westminster government. Speaking after introducing a 10-minute rule bill to the House of Commons, the SNP MP for Eastern Bartonshire said the public are currently priced out of buying sunscreen due to a lack of government action. At present, sunscreen is taxed in line with cosmetics, while other healthcare products are exempt from VAT. Amy Callaghan's VAT Burn campaign would lead to the removal of VAT from sunscreen. She has today issued a warning to Tory ministers that it is dangerous to ignore the voice of survivors, as cases of melanoma have more than doubled since the early 1990s. 16,000 new cases are diagnosed each year of melanoma across the United Kingdom, resulting in an astonishing 2,300 deaths. As many as 90% of cases of melanoma could be prevented by staying safe in the sun, which includes using sunscreen of SPF 30 and above with a 4-star UVA protection rating. And I remember with my own kids that UVA protection rating being shown to me being very important indeed. So far, Amy Callaghan's VAT Burn campaign has received cross-party support in Parliament and the backing of 6 national cancer charities, including the Teenage Cancer Trust, yet the UK government has so far refused to even consider the proposal. As a survivor and the SNP MP, Amy Callaghan commented, "Wearing sunscreen is one of the simplest things we can do to protect our skin against the risk of cancer, but 1 in 8 of us don't wear it because of the cost. My campaign will stop families being priced out of buying sunscreen and make it affordable for everyone. This is a simple and inexpensive bill that could save countless lives, but the Tories appear unwilling to take the action that is needed. It is dangerous to ignore the voice of survivors. Australia, the United States and Canada have already removed VAT-style taxes from sunscreen. There is nothing stopping the UK government doing the same." And I think, if my memory serves me right, it's a similar argument that happened with regards to female hygiene products and VAT as luxury items. And finally tonight, the trains that grew too big or were made too big, which has led to the Spanish Transport Secretary having to resign because the new trains are too big for their tunnels. Spain's Secretary of State for Transport and the head of the state rail company have resigned amid continuing public and political anger after it emerged that dozens of new trains ordered for two northern Spanish regions were too big to fit through some of the tunnels. On Monday, Isabel Pardo de Vera, Spain's Secretary of State for Transport, tendered her resignation, as did Isaias Tabos, the president of Renfe. It was revealed last month that the trains being built under a €258 million contract would be too wide to pass through some of the tunnels in the two regions of Asturias and Cantabria. The firing last month of two senior officials, one at Renfe and the other at the State Rail Infrastructure Company, ADIF, proved insufficient to placate those angry over the poor planning and the consequent delay. The socialist-led coalition government of Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has previously been at pains to insist that the errors had been spotted before any train was built, and that not a single euro of Spaniards' money has been wasted as a result. He has tried to make further amends by announcing that travel on the Asturian and Cantabrian networks affected by the delays would be free until the news rolling stock began to come into service in early 2026. They went on to say that the situation would have been worse had smaller trains been built that had failed to live up to travellers' expectations. Well, that is it for this evening. I'd like to thank you for joining me. Although it's been a solo evening, it's been good to have you with us. And I referred earlier on to Linda having a bit of a bump. We depend upon a linchpin in order to ensure that what we have here at Broadcasting Scotland, which is dependent upon the generosity of supporters and the volunteers, the people who are here attempting to produce something with a Scottish perspective, news that is given to you an opportunity to see it differently from where else you can find it. But we need people. We need you to donate or to sign up to make a regular monthly payment. Donating is very important because tomorrow night we're going to be unusually off air because we don't have the bodies to make it happen. We depend upon people's generously donated time. So what we would love is our target of 10,000 new subscribers would allow us not to depend on volunteering, but to employ people to upskill those volunteers, to give people the opportunity to come in and to have the training that would allow them to go into the community, the media community, and to take some of that Scottish perspective out there to help influence how we see news in this country. Now, our programmes will always be free to view, but if you can afford to become a subscriber, can I ask if you would please? Because with Linda having a wee bump, what we have ended up with is a bit of a gap. So if you could help us to fill it, we would not only be very grateful, but we'd all be part of something much bigger than what we could attribute or do on our own. So, on behalf of all of us who are still here at Broadcasting Scotland, thank you for joining us tonight. But we hope that you will join us in the future as well and make sure that we have a sustainable, achievable goal met to ensure that what you've got here is something that you can keep and treasure. So from me, Donald C Stewart, for tonight, it's good night and thank you for watching.